Good evening. My name is George Whitten, the founder and director of Worthy News. The title of this episode is The Fall of Assad and the Future of the Middle East. It is December 8th, 2024. There is a lot going on, so let's get right to it. Last night, you had rebel forces overtake Damascus. And if you're not familiar with what's happening in the Middle East, you have basically two main factions of Islam battling one another: the Shiites, which are backed by Iran, and Sunnis, which are basically backed by more or less Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And last night you had opposition forces that were backed by Turkey that overran Damascus. Now, the dynamic of the future is interesting because if Turkey becomes the new Iran, in the context of this Israeli Middle East Palestinian conflict, then you have to understand that Turkey is a member of NATO. It's going to be a very different dynamic in the future. Last night, the head of HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Abu Muhammad al-Jujani, entered into the Great Mosque of Damascus, known as one of the most important mosques in the Islamic world. Its construction began in 634 AD, and it is actually on top of the site of a church. And so al-Jujani was very interesting in how he orchestrated this whole move. It was as if they didn't face any sort of opposition. Before they liberated the main city of Homs, he sent out a message saying, "These are historic moments. Show mercy to the people. Those who abandon their weapons among Assad's men are protected, and whoever run away, do not chase them." And literally, you had Assad and the Syrian army just lay down their weapons. They literally just entered into Damascus. You had a situation where you had millions of people that are just celebrating all over Damascus. You had Assad flee into Russia. It was later confirmed. You had the Iranian embassy overtaken in Damascus. You had the presidential palace seized. You had the Syrian Bank of Syria looted. You had, millions of people screaming freedom. So the question is, what does the future hold? What is the future? Well, in the town of before I jump into that, I want to talk about what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump tweeted on Saturday that there was opposition forces in Syria getting ready to overtake Russia or overtake Damascus. And what's interesting was that here he actually said that the Russians have lost 600,000 soldiers. That is staggering if that is actually true. But then what was interesting, he went ahead and this whole Arab Spring that really began, over 10 years ago, this was really when President Obama refused to, honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand. And that's when you had a vacuum gap and Russia stepped in. And now what was interesting is that Donald Trump basically said the United States should have nothing to do with Syria. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. So this action of Donald Trump is already foretelling the future that the United States doesn't want to get involved in a sectarian violence between Shiites and Sunnis. Um, After the collapse happened yesterday, Donald Trump tweeted, or I guess truthed again on Truth Social, and he said Assad is gone. He has fled to his country. This protector Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, was not interested in protecting him any longer. And what was interesting here, where he went ahead and detailed there were 600,000 Russian soldiers that lay dead, he also detailed how Ukraine may have lost 400,000 soldiers and many more civilians. And so this is why he was pressing for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. But if that's accurate, we're talking about 1 million people have died since the Ukraine war started. And what's interesting is now he is looking at changing the whole geopolitical dynamic in the entire Middle East. Here he says he knows Vladimir well, and this is his time to act. And then he also says that China needs to get involved. And so now the world is waiting. So we'll see what that actually details and what that means in the future. Meanwhile, in the city of Tartus, for those that aren't familiar, this is where the Russians basically have a base. And, this is the town that President Bashar gave Moscow a Mediterranean port in Tartus and also a nearby air base in return for Russia's military support against its enemies. Well, today it was reported that the Russians are evacuating their air base, and in the city of Tartus, they went ahead and let's see. Oh, let me go back one. Here we go. Let me turn this down. They went ahead and toppled. They've been toppling statues all over Syria, and so this was a dynamic that has taken place. That now we see that Russia is basically losing everything. They are giving up a strategic bowl. Now this statue is taken down. There's a huge celebration, and they're jumping in for joy. And this is right in the Mediterranean Sea, which the rebels have gotten to. Meanwhile, this is another video. Oops. This is another video of them actually riding the statue as they're going around. So there's huge celebrations all over Syria. Meanwhile, you had a situation that while all this was taking place, there was actually a summit in Turkey, and there was supposed to be a summit basically trying to figure out the future of Syria, and no less within hours of this summit of what to do with Syria, Syria collapses, Damascus collapses. Now, Sergei Lavrov was just on Tucker Carlson, just in a major interview, and in my last episode, I detailed how I was wondering who was firing ballistic missiles. Were Ukrainian troops trained to fire ballistic missiles into Russia, or was perhaps U.S. troops on the ground? And in this interview, he actually detailed how he said that there were huge U.S. troops on the ground that were launching missiles. Now, not only that, but we reported that they were also firing British missiles, and that was a little later on. He didn't detail British forces, but now you have to wonder just how many allies are actually involved in the Ukraine situation. But in this interview, what was happening as this interview was happening in Turkey, as they're getting together, the collapse of Syria had taken place, and in this, he's being interviewed by an Al Jazeera reporter, and he blurts out something. He says, "If you want me to say yes, we lost in Syria. We are so desperate. If this is what you need, let's continue." And so, what's interesting is they already are looking at the collapse in Syria as a major defeat. This is, a dynamic, because you have to understand that to Iran, Syria was the centerpiece of its axis of resistance. This is the funnel which weapons were channeled into Hezbollah. This was a vital piece of territory in their arc of influence. So now, with Russia and Iran losing Syria, this changes the whole dynamic of the Middle East. Meanwhile, you had this was an Air Force base inside of Syria that sustained today the Air Force did the heaviest attacks in Syria since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Literally dozens of aircraft attacked over 100 targets that were connected to the Syrian army almost nonstop, and they were blowing up military targets, including this airfield today. Meanwhile, you had a situation where the Israel's continued to build its buffer zone. In its buffer zone, they were building up a trench. They were building multiple trenches, and Benjamin Netanyahu jumped onto the buffer zone and actually took credit for the demise of the Assad regime. And he said, he said, "We work toward a policy of good neighborliness, the same good neighborliness that we maintained when we established a field hospital here that treated thousands of Syrians who were wounded and injured in the civil war. Hundreds of Syrian children were born here in Israel. And we send a hand of peace to our Druze neighbors. First of all, they are brothers of our Druze brothers in the state of Israel. And we also send a hand of peace to the Kurds, Christians and Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We will follow the developments closely. We will do what is necessary to protect our border and protect our security. So while this is taking place, obviously, Israel is really looking toward the situation with the Kurds, and what they are looking at. This area in yellow is Kurdish controlled. This this green area is the area of the rebels that were just launched. This is Damascus that was just taken out. In these green areas that were taken over, they're basically Sunnis backed by Turkey. As this is all playing itself out, here's the U.S. Air Base sitting right here. There's about 600 U.S. soldiers sitting on this base right here that is now surrounded. Now you have these pockets of purple. These pockets of purple are Islamic. Is the government and its allies still control, but these little pockets of blue here are where Islamic State control. And so this dynamic is opening up, and now we're going to see what Israel and the United States are going to continue to push for is a state of Kurdistan. And what they really want to do is create this huge buffer zone, and that's probably what we're going to see in the future in the Middle East. And the reason why is because they've already proven themselves as very secular. When the Iraq regime fell, the Kurds were given an autonomous zone here in the northern part of Iraq. And at that time, in 2012, they basically did not openly endorse any single religion in public schools. It was a true haven of secularism. And so, what they were trying to do is show themselves as moderate Islamics. And so, that is the dynamic taking place around the Middle East. I do believe that as we continue to go forward, we'll see the true liberation of the entire Middle East. Really, we're going to see the liberation of Gaza from Hamas. We're going to see the liberation of Lebanon from Hezbollah. We're going to see now the liberation of Iran from the Ayatollahs. And now we'll see how the situation plays out in Syria. But right now, we're going to look toward what is Turkey's role, because I think we're seeing now in a more dynamic role that Turkey will play because of the fact not only does the president he wants to bring back kind of the Ottoman Empire. So, he's going to look to himself as how to strengthen himself. And so this dynamic of Sunni and Shiite is still playing itself out. We'll see how it plays out, especially as Iran ramps up its nuclear program, and we may see action with the Iranian situation. Now, if you have a church or a Christian ministry and you have an online ministry, we actually offer free syndication of all of our news. And we go ahead and give it away for free. It will work toward our ministry opportunities in Israel. Can't really explain how, but just trust me. And, we go ahead and syndicate our news. We literally give away our news. We just want the body of Christ to be edified, to actually find out the true facts. We live by command, thou shalt not bear false witness. So we're just gonna give you the facts of what's on the ground. If you do not get our worthy briefs, hey, sign up for them. It doesn't cost anything. We send out a daily devotion Monday through Friday. Along with that, we have an app. And the great thing about the app is even if Worthy News, isn't updating up to date, our app actually is up to date minute by minute, over 50 news agencies you can go ahead and cover. So that's the episode today. Continue to just keep the Middle East in prayer. I do believe that all of this is working out because God has a hand of reaching the sons of Ishmael and the Persian community inside of Iran with the gospel. And so we're going to continue to anticipate what God is doing. Obviously, as many pundits were saying, this is the Gog Magog war, this is the fall of Damascus or the collapse of Damascus. That's actually not what's taking place right now. I believe this is the great last push, this sense of peace that allows really the gospel to be unfettered, to go ahead and just be able to be proclaimed throughout the world. So until next time, my name is George Whitten. Have a great day. Be blessed.